Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Professor Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin, and in today's video, I would like to make a comment on the topic of what is an academic statement and what is a statement that can be construed as a hate speech or a political statement. Now, first of all, we must understand that the academic statement have several characteristics to it. The first characteristic of an academic statement, as opposed to a political or a personal viewpoint, is that an academic will always answer by explaining what is called the big picture. For instance, what is the cause of racial disunity in this country? Now, for a politician, they would simply answer, oh, it's the fault of this race, or it's the fault of that race, it's the fault of this religion, or it's the fault of that religion, or it's the fault of this party, or the fault of that party. But for an academic, he or she would first of all say, well, there are many issues related to race relations, such as the school education system, such as the university system, where private universities don't use the Malay language. And also we can also look at the statement by political leaders who gets away from making very harsh statement using religion. There are also many issues about political parties making disparaging statement against others, and these are many aspects that makes the idea of race unity very difficult. And one of them perhaps could be the education of our young. Some are sent to madrasah, where they are being Malay. Some are sent to vernacular schools, where they are with other race, with one other particular race, and some are just having in the public school, where most of the teachers are of one particular race. And so this is how an academic would answer. A politician would just point finger directly and would not even explain any big picture. So you have to decide whether the statement by that academic was a political statement or was it an academic statement. Secondly, an academic statement would come with some evidence. You cannot say such things like, oh, this race hates another race, or this race are very disparaging, meaning they say bad things about another particular race. Or you say something like, well, the Chinese students, they're not that clever, and so they choose to go through the Mandarin school. So what about all those madrasah school? They're not that clever to go to international school, and they just go to the Bahasa Malaysia school full of people just to learn religion. Now that is very disparaging. I have colleagues at the university who has become dean at a very young age, who went to vernacular school. I have my own head of School of Architecture, so very excellent designer, knows how to speak Malay very well as is a very good manager and leader. So I don't understand it when it says that the Chinese students are very weak, that they have to learn Mandarin, and therefore vernacular schools are easy to go to, and therefore they produce perhaps second-rate students. I don't really think that is a clear evidence of anything. And anyway, in any statement that doesn't have evidence, well, that it doesn't become an academic statement. It becomes a personal statement, or worse, becomes a political statement that creates a very dark picture of one particular race. And now the third thing is that an academic statement would always mention the limitation. An academic statement, it will ask, so what is the problem of race relations? Then they would say things like, well, in a study of several schools, it is found that there is no Malay being spoken in any of their activities, no Malay being made into a kind of a karangan competition, or there is no mixture of Malays and non-Malays planned in terms of camps and things like that. So the limitation of the study is only to a few schools, because research cannot go through all schools, and therefore the statement is only true for a few schools that may suggest a bigger issue. So all research will have their limitation. I have been academic a very long time, and an examiner of thesis. I'm very careful to say that a lot of this research, I understand the limitation, and once the candidate goes beyond that limitation by making a very huge statement to say, therefore this is the cause of such a thing, then I would have to remind them that no, your study is just a few sample. Okay, it's just enough to suggest something very strongly, but it does not mean that it is the truth altogether. Now, the other aspect of an academic statement that I always say to my students or candidate of PhD is that an academic statement is not the truth. And though this may come as a shock and say, oh, he's an academic, whatever he says must be the truth. No, it's not like that. Okay? An academic statement is simply based on a very short-term research, and therefore it is only a statement that is considered very rational, considered very quote-unquote scientific, meaning it can be repeated, it has some validity, and it is a very, very well, a good way to start something. You know, if you have a problem, you do some kind of research, and then you come to a conclusion, then you can do something to address this issue. But to say that it is the truth, no, it cannot be. Why? Because this academic statement, whether it is a PhD or whether it is a paper, must be presented many times and debated and also questioned, and hopefully that people like the professor who said something against Chinese present it in front of the Chinese. I have presented in front of the Malay public in terms of my concerns about the Malay community. But I don't know whether certain professors who make mention about the Chinese community being at fault in terms of race unity have said so in front of what we call the lion's den. So as an academic, that is the life that we live. We make statements, and the statements are usually very controversial because the research is very good research, and research that are very good is usually very controversial. But it needs to be presented in a proper audience, not being presented with a group that agrees with that person. So I have noticed that some professors, they present in safe places, their own public university, when they talk about such things, and then in some media that is also by certain group of people. So this to me does not add credibility to the particular professor, but of course to certain race, or they are very good because they have the term professor with them. And so the last thing that I would like to say about academic statements made by professors is something which is rather unfortunate. Now, in the realm of academia, the academic who aspire to become somebody who's very wealthy in terms of very high paying or high payment for their academic research have two lines. Number one, they excel themselves as a writer, researcher, and as a full-fledged academic. But the other one is the one who plays politics. Now, what do you mean by playing politics? Well, there are many ways to play politics. One of the ways is to choose a topic that is in agreement with the present government or with the political party that will take over the government. I have seen several professors have done that, and this is something very sad, and they have been rewarded very handsomely, and this has caused quite a concern to me in terms of creating much worse situation in terms of our idea of nation building. There are actually academics who argues for the supremacy of one particular race. This I have seen with my eyes. I have read the books. I have read the journals. I have read the readings, and it makes me very sad. So, of course, some people will say, well, this is academic, and it is true that they are academic. But academic in Islam does not mean that you are having a good intention. But this is, of course, beyond academia. But in Islam, it is part of being an academic and a scholar. The responsibility of conscience, responsibility of spirituality, responsibility to God in terms of having good relations with others, and goodness for all, not a selfish reason to advance yourself. This is a sin in Islam. But in academia, somebody may be writing for points or rankings, and they get rewarded, and the country doesn't really get anything because those papers doesn't really affect anything, so they get promoted. The other one goes on the political line of carrying favor or focusing on one particular race supremacy narrative, and they make their research around that, and they get millions of ringgits of grants, and also get promoted and get a lot of things from the ruling party. Or if not, they will be waiting for the other group that will be ruling the country, and so this is also part of being an academic in Malaysia. So that is not a very good academic, but then I'm sorry to say, many of the academics in Malaysia perhaps are somebody that should be looking at a wider picture of spirituality, inclusiveness, and development of the nation. But that is the way it has been phrased by Barisan Nasional, that we are a country that has one supreme race, and therefore those who support that narrative are the ones that will be rewarded and regarded, and also being awarded many accolades and grants and things like that. It takes time for us to change, and I hope we may change for the better. But before that, I advise people to look at the academic statements by academics. First, did they mention the big picture? Second, did they put up some evidence? And third, did they mention the limitation of their statement? If they do not do all those three things, then it borders on what we call a political statement. And we are allowed to have political statement in this country, but the statement should be framed very carefully in order for us not to hurt each other. And usually it's doesn't really belong to a whole group of people, only a certain group of people that is being said to have that characteristic of whatever racial hatred and things like that. So being an academic does not mean that just because you have the finding and then you can frame the finding in your own academic language. You need also to look at the sensitivity of the situation, and also with wisdom. Now, good academics have wisdom. Bad academics have fact, so-called data, not fact, sorry, so-called data. And data to them are the truth, when to a veteran academic like me, they are not the truth. They are simply pointers to some sort of situation or problem that may have a certain kind of solution to be addressed. So with that, I leave the Malaysian citizen to decide whether the speech or the statement made by this professor on the Chinese disparaging Malays and Chinese being very weak and prefer to learn Mandarin because they cannot learn any other, and also that they the Chinese are the ones that is having this problem of racial unity becoming a huge problem, the vernacular school being the main problem and things like that. So I myself do not believe so, because I understand the big picture of things. And thirdly, the vernacular school must reflect on itself to move forward in this country. Cannot be that they have been doing all these things and they haven't done something to actually address certain issues. But to say that they are the main cause, I would definitely not agree to that. And so it stands that whether the statement is something that can be considered an academic statement by an academic or a hate speech by a person looking for other kinds of rewards for other people. So that one, we must leave it to the people to decide.